started getting really stressed out.
Oh, I
When I got right there, I was like really stressed in the beginning.
All comfy. Because I was like, what about
I'm just waiting for you to get up.
I'll start throwing happens.
I'll sleep anywhere.
Really?
Me too. Planes, cars, whatever. I'm like, I don't want to be in front of the car.
I think you got the 30-minute conference.
Thank you. I want to bring out that other stuff. It helps a lot.
I think so, and the other thing, because some of the, what's that, we have to do
That might be it. I'm not sure, Margaret, but
What?
I'm not going to start. I think it might, this might be everybody.
Okay.
There might be a couple more people coming from Section Z, but,
You want to make a call?
yeah,
I'll make a call.
Sorry.
thank you.
It's
I don't
lonely
hear
up
anybody
here.
else coming up tomorrow, there's class in start, so if you're not up here, please make your way up, you're planning on
Huh? Am I that much ahead? That happened?
I don't want to do it that way.
I made my sausage and toast for breakfast this morning in the Baboon building. And Ellen comes in and she's like, it smells like dog food in here. What's going on? It smells like dog food. I'm like, oh, it might be my breakfast. But I still have dog food.
Chuck that cake in watermelon.
I don't know. Got nothing. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. This is kind of a new topic, and really it's a part of the training level system that we're implementing. So some of the information is perhaps, again, redundant. Be interested in your feedback to see if you think it's too redundant. But I do think it's important that we think about our daily activities and management and the implications of the things that we know we have to do to take care of animals. But, you know, I kind of like to say the animals didn't get the memo about why you have to shift them, separate them, knock them down, whatever it is that you have to do for their health and well-being and to facilitate daily management. So as we're always pressed for time, rushing through our day, I think it's kind of important to sometimes take a step back and see how stop and think about, I guess, how our activities might affect the animals and what they might take away as an experience that's related to something that we have to do to take care of them. So we're just sort of calling this, for lack of a better name for it, is husbandry and veterinary training. So husbandry, you know, what does husbandry mean? We throw it around a lot. Husbandry basically just involves the practices that we use in daily care and management of animals. And really, I think the word husbandry actually kind of emerged from the farm industry, but we certainly use it in zoos a lot. So husbandry training is just simply teaching the animals to volunteer. Of course, we're talking about positive reinforcement training whenever I say training, but so husbandry training is the use of positive reinforcement training to get the animals voluntary cooperation and participation in all of these daily tasks that we have to do. And like all of the other training, the foundation of that is trust. And having the animals trust and voluntary cooperation is essential and fundamental to successful husbandry training. And, you know, again, because we have our tier system here, the animals are expected to all be trained in tier 1 behaviors. Tier 1 behaviors are those that the managers have deemed as essential for daily care and management of the animals. So they're the very basic behaviors that we need to properly care for the animals. Some tier 2 behaviors would also fall into the category of husbandry training, and perhaps for some individuals with, you know, specific needs or unique needs, you might even have some tier 3 behaviors that would be included for their daily husbandry and care. So when we're thinking about these sorts of things, you know, really the first step is getting access to the animals. We need to be able to get close to them or have them come close to us so we can do visual checks and all of those things. And this is really, you know, starting at the beginning, which is what the tier 1 behaviors do. If we can really have the chance to go through the tier behaviors in kind of the way that they're laid out, then that really does create a great foundation for the animals. And so then that provides the foundation for all of the more challenging behaviors that we want to do eventually. So, in thinking about what is essential for these very basic behaviors, oftentimes things like tactile contact, we might need to touch the animals to be able to get a good thorough look at them, or certainly to start doing more advanced medical behaviors, we're going to have to be able to touch them. We need them to come to us, shift in and out of different spaces, move between the spaces, and then we also need them to sit still, hold a position, stay in a location. And for some socially housed individuals, separation training, which I talked about yesterday, separation training may be an important part of husbandry training as well. So those were just kind of the things that came to mind. And I don't know, have y'all seen there's a handout that has been created to accompany this presentation. It's in the hands of the training committee now. Whose training committee is here? Valerie. Do you know, has that been distributed, the husbandry document?
Really sends it out. No.
Okay. There is accompanying paperwork, and I'm sorry I didn't provide it because I guess I thought that maybe it had been distributed. But when we were kind of talking about this with the training committee, these were the things. Oh my God! Why didn't y'all tell me it wasn't up there?
Because you were doing so well.
I'm just talking away, looking at my screen.
Until just a minute.
It was.
I thought you were doing it.
Did I do?
I don't know.
How YouTube came up for a hot second.
I thought you were like putting some up, so we were like, I don't know, Margaret's got some plans.
It was only about 30 seconds, you're fine.
I thought you were doing something that you were planning.
Well, sorry to disappoint you, no.
Well,
Nothing exciting coming up. Did I?
there you go. I don't know.
There we go. Did y'all see that?
Yeah, we've seen everything up.
Sorry about that. So when I was kind of helping to put that document together, these were the things that just kind of popped up as the really essential objectives that we might need for husbandry training. So if anybody else has anything that you would add to this list, it's a good time to kind of expand it, or go back and think about it and come back to us with more details. Now I'm going to be looking up there neurotically. So again, we know that those other elements are the things that we kind of need to be able to do with the animals, but how do we make those things happen? So we need to be able to use our positive reinforcement training tools and really have a good thorough understanding of how to use these tools and what it means. So different types of targets, which we've talked about all the different kinds of targets. Some of you that are maybe newer to training or just really starting to expand the types of training that you're doing, moving through the tier 1 behaviors and starting to do some other types of behaviors. I mean, California, y'all are just really starting to build your programs with the animals. So maybe you haven't really begun to use a whole lot of different types of targets yet, but you might want to think about how that can be helpful. So not just a stick target, you can do things with the different types of targets and use them for different purposes. Kind of understanding how you can use your bridge, the different ways that you can use it, and of course a variety of reinforcements. So really I think having what's the word I'm looking for? Not just a functional, but kind of an overview of the tools and how they can help you is really essential. And then of course, when you want to make changes in how you're going to implement different things, different uses of these tools. And essential to any husbandry and certainly veterinary program is a really good understanding of desensitization and acclimation, and the ability to skillfully apply desense, which really involves kind of understanding the individual animal, when to take big steps forward, when to take small steps, when is it okay to push it a little bit, when is it a better choice to have lots and lots of small steps. And those are the kinds of things that I think definitely come with experience and practice. And the only way to get good is just to keep practicing. So the more opportunities you can have to practice your desensitization techniques, the better. And of course, if you're going to do all of these things, you have to have behaviors given to you by the animals on a fairly reliable basis. So if you ask the animal to shift from A to B or move from A to B, then they should do that in a quick and reliable manner rather than running through the whole repertoire of behaviors before achieving the one that you've asked for. So that's what I mean by reliable basic behaviors. All right, so looking at those elements, those 4 things that I mentioned at first, tactile contact, what does this mean? It means that the animal remains pretty calm while you touch it, or the animal is calm touching you in a way that you've trained it to do. If you want it to bring its hip or bring its wing towards you, that's still tactile contact, but the animal's making the contact with you, but it still facilitates what you might need to do. So you may do this while you're sharing space with the animal, you may do it through a barrier. There's a number of different ways to achieve this. So these, and all of this is in the handout, so I don't really want to read everything to you again. I guess I was kind of hoping that you would have the handout, but I should have checked, so I apologize for that. The ability to touch the animal for an extended period of time and perhaps even manipulating body parts would be perhaps part of tactile contact. And if you are experiencing any aggression from the animal, I think that's where kind of taking a step back and trying to determine why the animal's being aggressive. Most likely it's some sort of fear-based aggression, and maybe the animal feels a bit trapped, and so they're aggressing because they feel like they can't run away from you. I have sound today. I didn't have sound yesterday. Whoops. Why isn't the sound coming out of the TV?
Yes, it is.
You can just hear it, yeah. Should be quiet.
Break it up.
It's not a surprise, except it's not gonna see. It's kind of like,
It's not even surprising.
that's what happened the other day. All right, well, this monkey is just in the very early stages of learning to accept touch. So you can see she's just approximating her hand closer and closer to his shoulder. So that would be the very early stages of tactile contact, obviously with a barrier. And so obviously training an animal for this sort of tactile contact is really the desensitization, right? Because you're bridging the animal at the exact moment that they are allowing the touch and telling them good for letting that touch happen. And in this case, she's obviously focusing on the hooves, working towards hoof maintenance and care. And she's got the nice little window there to work with, and he's up on an elevated platform, which goatee types of things like. So it makes him feel pretty safe and comfortable, and is quite convenient for the trainer. You don't have to squat down and be in a kind of odd compromised position. So here you can see they're using the hanging target to station the beak while the touch happens. And I think something that we need to think about is being able to use our tools. I mean, targets are important tools. They can do a lot for you, But if the animals are scared of them, then it's not gonna be very helpful. And I know with in some of the different groups where we've worked around the zoo, we've talked about when you're in the process of desensitizing the animal to let you touch it with the target, that once you get to the point where you can reach in and touch it, you want to, as quickly as possible, move to touch the animal with the target and then have them move towards the target and start reinforcing that movement, because otherwise you train them to sit still while you poke them with targets. And then, I mean, you've done a nice job of desensing them to being poked with a stick, but if they're still, you know, 1.5 feet away from the cage front and you really need them to come into the cage front, that can be a risk that you take. But, you know, oftentimes you do need to desensitize to that second target coming in to touch them. And I really like this because you can see the cheetah like turn around and look at it, flicking the tail, a little nervous about it. And this was an interesting case too, because she was quite good, like seemed super accepting of the target when we first started introducing the hip target to her. And then all of a sudden it seemed like she went, whoa, what are you doing back there? I don't like that anymore. And even when the target would just sit on the ground, she was swinging her hip completely out in the opposite direction. So it took a bit of desensitization to get her to tolerate lifting the target, gradually putting it in further and further, and then beginning to touch her with it. And like I said, I really like that you can see she looks back at the target, she's flicking her tail, he moves the nose target up a little bit, gets her on the nose target, and is able to go in and touch her with the hip target to start working on that movement. So yeah, you may have to train for using the tools, or for animals that aren't very comfortable being touched by your hand. Oh, that's super loud. You may choose to use another object. Here, obviously, she's training the giraffe for touch on the neck and using the paintbrush on a stick, because the giraffe was much more reactive to a hand reaching up. So the first step was just a little touch with the stick. And that also kind of got the hand moving, and then we could start working towards actually touching with the hand. So just kind of, just wanted to throw out different examples of what really are considered tactile contact. I mean, I think a lot of times we think of it as touching the animal with our hand and being able to look all over, but all of these other things involve kind of invading their space and touching them, or them coming to us like the bird with the wing. So yeah, just kind of throwing that out there to think about. Then, of course, the next part is teaching the animal to stay, steady, hold, whatever you call it. And, you know, we're just talking about holding a position or remaining in a location. And I think most of us are using a verbal cue that means like stay, hold, and perhaps even a hand signal as well. So you ask the animal, open, stay, or go to your target, hold, whatever it might be. And so this is a behavior that you're going to train and reinforce just like any other behavior. And similar to other situations like a body target, the concept of staying will start to generalize to other behaviors. So it's really best to teach it with an easy behavior. So if the animal's comfortable sitting, then that's a good behavior to start off with teaching the concept of stay. If they're comfortable touching a target and holding on the target, not afraid of the target, not starting to hit it, something like that, you can start teaching the concept of stay on the target. And then you might find it useful, I know I do, to use a verbal release. So I'll say, okay, or all right, something that tells the animal, yep, you're good to break position now, relax, do something else. So this is very early in introducing the hold to this guy, and you can see he's kind of nibbling at the target, which actually helps him stay on it. Of course, he's not nibbling there, he's doing a perfect one. And sometimes the hold is really tiny increments. increments that you're increasing. I know we've talked about this like with the otters, with super energetic animals, hold for them might be a split second. Or if you've got like the bears who are really energetic and they start, like you know they're starting to anticipate getting the food, so they get all ready for that. Teaching that nice, calm, stay, relaxed behavior can be really helpful. But, I mean, the increments can be tiny. Even with a fairly calm animal like this elephant, teaching her to hold her ear out. I mean, 2 really quick bridges in there, a tiny, tiny increase in the hold behavior. You know, and then in the end, it may look more like Alright, so I think we also, you know, when we're kind of considering these behaviors, I think it's good to think about what are non-invasive procedures or behaviors and what we might think of as more invasive kinds of behaviors. You know, and by definition, anything that you're doing going into the animal and actually starting to invade the animal's space, whether it's with a thermometer or something else like that, those are invasive procedures. So we might want to teach, again, the easiest behaviors, the non-invasive procedures first. Things like body part presentations, where the animal's just presenting different body parts. That's going to be usually our easy place to start. We may have some sample collection, like urine collection, that isn't necessarily an invasive procedure. So kind of thinking of the different ways that you want to start with an animal, given their personality and what they can tolerate, and also what the needs are. So radiographs, other than desensitization to the equipment, are pretty non-invasive behaviors. Pretty easy for most animals to tolerate. The joy of digital radiographs right there. Ultrasound, sort of the same thing. So once you get the, you know, obviously the position, the animal desensitized to the equipment, there's really no pain or discomfort with these types of behaviors. So again, just a little teaching hold. You can see really quick hold there, quick bridges. This monkey's just learning to put his arm in the blood sleeve. He's got it facing the wrong way, but starting to learn to hold and holding that target a little bit. Another seal's working. So again, same behavior, just so different ways of getting animals to hold a position or location, right? Just teaching stay in really small increments, and you can get, as I'm sure a lot of you know, you can get animals to stay for quite extended periods of time. So once we get these body parts, kind of the non-invasive stuff going, maybe we want to think about what other instruments or implements we need to use, be it thermometer, stethoscope, hacksaw for cutting hippo teeth, whatever it might be. And then of course we would need to do a lot of desensitization with those sorts of things. So again, some of them might be a little bit more invasive, like actually inserting something into the animal, like a thermometer. Although I would say in my experience, chimps seem to enjoy this behavior. Pretty reinforcing for them. Spin that thermometer a little bit. Or desensitizing for something that's, relatively not invasive, like urine collection. So this is desensitizing to the pee wand. So the idea here is that piece of PVC would be slipped through the caging underneath him. Urinating would be captured, and then the two would be put together, so you can say, pee for me, or whatever you want to say. Slip in the PVC, and they urinate on you, and you get to collect a fresh midstream sample. Nice little stethoscope work there. The point here is that everything does require holding, maintaining a position, introducing different sorts of implements, different feelings, in this case for blood draw, touching, pressure on holding the vein off, occluding the vein. Somebody poking him.
He's hitting his hand. The one on top was hitting the chin. He was doing the whole her other hand and hitting it in.
It's probably better. And obviously then you get into the more invasive things like needlework for blood draws, polar bear blood draws. That's life size. They are big, yeah. And I didn't put in the other, like, some of the other work that we did with the black bears, and I don't know if it's going to be an objective here to put in paw, what do you call it, a paw box for blood draws, but then, like, we've also done it under a door where the bear could just slip their paw under the door enough to be able to access the veins there. Sometimes we have to shave, sometimes not. On the polar bear, obviously, it wasn't shaved. On the black bears, we shaved the paw so that we could see a little bit better. What is this? Stethoscope. Another stethoscope example. Cute little pigtail. So she's using the hand target to direct his hands, and then he's top chest with the second target. Of course, his right hand could still cause trouble.
Yeah. Just right there.
He's a nice guy. She was excited. I think this was the first time that the vet had come down to actually put the stethoscope on him. You know, the keepers had been practicing and training, but it was the first time that he had come down to do it, so very excited. This is in Singapore, actually, and all of the tiny little mesh So we cut out that window to have a training place. Everything is covered in super tiny mesh because of snakes. Because there's snakes that kill the zoo animals.
We're all like, got it.
Yeah, there's a lot of king cobras and huge pythons.
Like we know about that.
Yeah, it's a whole different, like, why can't we just make a training window here? Margaret, the snakes will carry our animals away. So everything has to be snake proofed, and there's big monitor lizards. They really like this area actually where he is. There's huge monitor lizards that are cruising by during training sessions. So it does kind of change things a bit.
So did they cover that training window back up again?
They've decided that Kong, although they've had Diana monkeys killed, when I used to do the Diana monkey stud book, there was like, oh, killed by snake in the stud book. But they've decided that he's okay. Yeah. Some of the others, like the spider monkeys, is all covered up, some of the other smaller monkeys, but he's kind of although he's pretty sweet there, he can be kind of a bad. All the drains, everything on the drains has to be covered up. It's a whole different level of caging. What's this? Oh yeah, so this is, I think it's fly spray or mite spray or, some sort of treatment that had to be given by spraying. So she's desensitizing this gal, I think, for spraying the gal. And I threw this in because was it the bears we were talking about with the trims?
Yeah.
Sun bears. I know it was sun bears. Yeah, so this was kind of a similar thing where we're in the process of teaching the chimpanzees to hold the PVC, and the idea is that they hold the PVC, which then puts the nails in a safer place for trimming so that there's less opportunity for them to do this, as opposed to just having the fingers out there and you're holding it and doing your trimming and then they nail you. So it kind of puts them in a safer place, stations the nails a little bit, yeah.
So the PVC is not attached to the mesh, they actually have to hold it themselves?
Yeah, and this is, we were kind of experimenting with it at this stage, so you can see she's actually helping to hold the PVC, but I think the final product would be to clip it on, say, put your hand here, and just reinforce keeping their hand there.
I was wondering if them holding it was a part of it, because that would keep their hands more...
Yeah, I know, like, this was many, many years ago. We did kind of talk about, is it better for them to hold it? But then it almost seemed like they were so tense on kind of holding it that if they could just relax with their hands over it, it achieved the safety objective of not getting our hands pinched underneath the wicked chimp fingers.
Good girl, Kitty. Hold. That's hold.
Also likes to have a nail
Hold
stain.
it. Hold. Hold.
I know.
It's your purple nail.
Hand. Hand.
Oh, that's the unsafe way. So that. My skin would crawl. I mean, these chumps were kind of remarkably nice when they wanted to be. But yeah, that was really like, the chump was like this, and she would just hold the nail and get all around the fingers and trim. I'm like, oh God, you're gonna lose your fingers. Oh, Andrea's not here, is she? Oh, I thought she would love this, like, blast from the past. So, come on, Iris. So moving, shifting, going A to B. Obviously, we would like for animals to move voluntarily, between not just their favorite spaces, but all enclosure spaces or management spaces that you have, which may include squeeze cages, shift areas between different habitats, whatever it might be. And not only do they need to move, but they need to move, stay, and allow you to close the door so that it's not a race to the door and trap them, right? We don't want that. So there's that stay command, the door is open, animal doesn't immediately run through when the door is open. You reinforce them for staying in position and then asking them to move. And again, holding position while the door is closed. And here you can see she's actually starting to assign a cue inside that means move into this particular area and using the target to direct him. The tiny target. And then of course you can work with multiple people or one person and a remote target and actually achieve that A to B behavior that I know we've talked about when the animal, if different than I come here, the animal actually responds to the go. Okay, and then we're going to finish up really quick. Separation training, again, we touched on it yesterday, so I didn't even bother to put a whole lot up about it today because we did look at some videos and talk about it yesterday. But we know separation training can be important to successfully achieve certain veterinary behaviors, and it can also be super stressful for some animals, so you want to make sure that you take time to gradually desensitize them for separations. And it may be something that you put considerable effort into right in the beginning of training, but then the payoff really comes in the long run because you've trained the animal to voluntarily separate. So in thinking about, our husbandry training and veterinary training and all of these sorts of things, is it working? Is it worth the time and the effort? I know time is a very precious commodity. You're making decisions every day about what you can achieve and what you can't. And all of this training business is going to take a time investment. But we know it's good for animals. There's papers that have been published looking at physiological parameters that are related to stress, and we can see that certainly animals are less stressed when they're trained for these procedures. So we know it's good for them. Staff time, there is an investment on the front end, but this pretty neat paper, and I'm not sure if there's many other, haven't really looked, but if there's many other papers that have been published actually looking at the staff time to achieve something like shifting, which is what this bottom bullet point, this beater paper, if anyone's interested in it, I can give it to you. But the project was essentially 30 mangabees that had to be shifted, and over about 57 sessions, 26 and a half hours of training time, they achieved 90% reliability, and the shifting time went from an average of about 28 minutes to less than 5 minutes of staff time per shift, and the shift was done twice a day. So in less than 35 days, they were making up time. So it is a considerable investment on the front end, but I really love this example because you can say, look, in just over a month, we're earning time. So, and that's hard for us when we have many tasks that you have to achieve every day. But for the managers and the leads in the room, you think about, oh, can we prioritize to achieve this really important objective? And then it's done, maintenance is minimal, and then you move on to the next thing. So it does seem daunting, it does seem like it takes a lot of time, but when we step back and think about it, perhaps the payoff comes pretty quickly. And I would love to see more sorts of things like this documented, or if anyone knows of any other papers or studies that document this sort of thing, I'd be super interested. Because I think it is a good argument if you need it. I mean, we all know we need to do this, right? It's just kind of making it happen. So other things to consider are, how is the reliability in our daily routines? And I think that we have to factor in social context. Are there social dynamics? Is the social structure changing? Are there seasonal changes? Again, I just came down from California, so thinking of the bears, are there seasonal changes that are factoring into how cooperative the animals seem over time? Can we begin to understand them better and make adjustments to the training? So I think there's, really taking a look at reliability over time is important information, and especially when we're looking at budgeting our time and where we can spend it. So not only do we want to train these behaviors, you're the primary trainer, you get it trained, yay, good job, but you've got to transfer it to other people. So when we're talking about husbandry, we're mostly talking about things that happen every day or almost every day. So it's important that not just one person can do it, which is why understanding all the tools, having good solid cues that are consistent and a consistent way of approaching it is of course so critical to transferring it among different people. And where appropriate and necessary, you can include the vet staff in that transfer, like with the monkey who was getting the stethoscope. But of course they have to make time for that. All right, so yay! Benefits of husbandry training. Things like all of these. And I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. I guess to me the really big thing is that staff time and the staff investment. And when we're setting priorities and looking at all the millions of things that we need to do, how can we set priorities that allow us to kind of check it off and then move on to something else? And that's a little bit different than some of the veterinary behaviors that we're training. I think that's what makes some of the husbandry stuff stand out a little bit, is like, gosh, it's just shifting, move from one place to another. But for so many different places where I've worked, shifting is a huge thing. And we have to go in and deal with shifting issues. And the animals are doing it every single day, so they're learning something every single day. So what do we want them to learn? Do we want them to learn that it's a good thing, or that sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it'll be a scary thing? So we know we get reliability if it's a good thing. I think that's it, yeah. That's really all I had on husbandry training. Just, like I said, I was just kind of hoping to maybe make you think about your daily routine and your priorities and how you go about those things and what they mean to the animals. And just kind of think about it in a little bit different way, even though the tools and techniques and concepts like desensitization are across the board. So, yeah, that's it. All right, any questions?
I have a question when it comes to the stay and hold conversation. In some of the videos, the stay or the hold cue, the verbal cue is repeated a few different times. What's your opinion on that versus you ask for the cue and you say hold or stay, and then you wait for that duration of time and then bridge that? So I don't know if you have an opinion on a strong one.
Oh, I have an opinion on almost everything. So, I guess, and my opinion is that it depends. When you're first training it and you really want the animal to begin to understand what this cue means and that you're giving them the stop sign or whatever it is, I might find that I repeat it more often so that I can say hold, bridge, so it's more opportunities for reinforcement. And we all learn through repetition. In a perfect world, you would say target, stay, until
For the whole
they're released.
duration, yeah.
Right. But I think some animals do benefit from hearing the cue and getting reinforced. And so I guess, and you know, not that you wanna go hold bridge, hold bridge, hold bridge, hold bridge
Right.
forever. But sometimes, especially if there's a lot of distractions, like the chimpanzee who's doing the thermometer, you know, he's getting poked in the hand, there's a group of, I think I mentioned them yesterday, that's that group of 18 that were hand raised. I mean, they were always doing some sort of weird, there was always weirdness going on. So I would usually subdivide to have a group of about 6, or sometimes 8 or 9. So there's a lot of chaos and weirdness going on there. So for him, it was even more important to say, you know, turn around, butt, bridge, because I can't throw food to him because he's turned away. So by having that communication with him, it really helped. Another one that comes to mind is an elephant. She's at pause now, but she was one that, like, I would almost have to look in her eye and say, steady, good girl, steady. Like, she needed that kind of feedback, constant feedback almost. So yeah, in a perfect world, you would say, put your ear out, hold it there until I release you. But some animals just need
Those
something a
smaller
little different.
approximations.
Yeah, and that feedback, I think, more, that kind of communication, look me in the eye and talk to me, kind of thing. And then some of them, you can say, go to your target and stay.
Would you, instead of potentially repeating the cue, an option of using those soft secondaries, but you'd have to train them obviously, but having them understand you might not get reinforcement with the soft secondary, but you are getting reinforced by hearing that soft secondary bridge. Would you potentially use that?
I mean, that's still reinforcement.
Yeah.
You're not, you know, you're not giving a primary reinforcement.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what was happening with the chimp.
Okay.
So he's turned away. I can't throw food to him or squirt juice. So he's getting secondary reinforcement.
But then potentially not diluting that stay cue. Does that make sense? Like using the soft secondary instead of doing stay, bridge feed kind of situation.
So it's more the stay bridge.
Yeah, more like stay, and then during that duration, good. Like using the soft secondary, and then bridge and reinforce at the end. But like more so down the line, if that animal is reliable and understanding exactly what that stay is.
And that's, I mean, I think that your verbal, if your verbal has become a part of the reinforcement, then yeah, you're using that as a way to reinforce.
Okay,
But you might bridge when somebody pokes him and he still stays.
gotcha.
Because
Okay.
then you want to say, yeah, right then you did really good. You stayed.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I think also, I guess the other part of it is when you're just teaching the animal and building it, oh, I did say this, you might repeat the cue.
Yeah.
And of course your approximations, depending on the animal, might be super tiny.
Right.
So you might say, you know, hand, hold, good. So you do really short, and then you might say hand, hold, hold, let them go. So, yeah, depending on where in the learning process they are. I think it's almost one of those behaviors that you do really adjust to the individual. I don't know, what do y'all think?
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area, I feel like, and it's always dependent upon your species and your individual, because every individual animal, they have their own progression. So I've seen it work where, you know, you can get there really fast and have the duration build up quickly, and then there's some animals that need those tiny approximations.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
absolutely. I mean, even like the elephant that was doing the ear, she needed super tiny approximations, whereas some other elephants like, whoop, flop my ear out and leave it there for years.
Yeah.
But it was like, ear, hold, like tiny, tiny seconds. I couldn't believe how small the approximations that particular elephant needed. Yes, Andrew.
I was just gonna say, the re-giving that cue for the hold or the stay, or whatever you wanna call it, could potentially be reinforcing in itself, just giving the attention also, because I've seen that with the macaws, where one will, like, if I say good, which is like, you know, the secondary or the intermediate bridge, she'll still wanna like come over and leave, but she still wants that attention, so that like good stay, without having to reinforce immediately, the attention itself has been reinforcing enough to be like, I'm still paying attention to you, even though I'm 4 feet away, and that's also enough of a reinforcement to continue the hold.
Yeah. And that sounds kind of like, yeah, like that elephant Maggie that you have to like look in her eye. We're giving you the attention, yeah. Okay. Well, it short and sweet.
Thank
Formal shift. What? I'm gonna stick on these 7 till. We're talking
Yeah, I think you should have, you've got Jen and Shelby. Yeah.
This little girl had a wire. Not here. I've seen them, but not. But she just had a wire mesh one. Okay, so train it to go in. Place that in the box.
It was good. Sunday.